Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello, and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
It's Season 3, Episode 21. It has been a long time since our last episode. It's been almost a month and a half. Actually, we just had our last episode about a few weeks after the draft, I'd say. So we went maybe almost the whole month of June. It is now June 29th without recording a single episode. And you know what? It's good for us to get some time off. And to be honest, there's not a whole lot to talk about. And as far as the Steelers are concerned, given the more recent off seasons we've seen with news, that's kind of a good thing. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, there's could be ACL tears and stuff like that, suspensions, all that good stuff, and the Steelers haven't gotten any, so that's a good thing.
And obviously there's been a lot going on in our lives besides football, so why don't we just talk a little bit about what's been going on. Obviously, I got to see you a few weeks ago. Me and my girlfriend went to see you. I visited you down there on Long Island, and we got to go to a Chinese place, and you ate there with a cowboy hat on.
Yes, sir. I was just chilling out. I was having a good time.
And what else have you been doing at the start of your summer?
Not much. Obviously, Stanley Cup playoffs happened, and I feel like I want to take this one only because I don't know if you guys know. I don't know if I said it on the podcast before, but this was my first year into hockey, and I was a Vegas Golden Knights fan going in, and I found the tweet that I had it before Vegas Golden Knights expansion draft saying that I was going to be a fan. So now I have the backup for it. But they lost in 5 in the Stanley Cup playoffs, Stanley Cup final. I'm sorry, it was sad. And now we're entering sports hell because we've entered sports hell because the only thing on right now is baseball. But other than that, my summer's been pretty good. How about you?
That's been pretty good. I can also vouch for you. I know you have your own backup for yourself, but I know for a fact that you were a Vegas fan since before the season started. Pretty much, I think, since right around the draft, if I'm not mistaken, or if not before then. I think you were talking about getting a Fleury jersey because you had a feeling he was going to end up there, and sure enough, he did.
Yes, sir. I have the tweet. It came from June 22nd.
All right, so that was obviously that would have been right before the expansion draft, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly. Exactamente.
What else? The Stanley Cup playoffs. I, being a Penguins fan, they didn't have the same run they had the last 2 years. Bowed out in 6 games to the Washington Capitals in the second round, the team that ended up winning it all. It was disappointing. It was kind of weird. I forgot what losing felt like in the National Hockey League playoffs. It sucks. It's not fun. As Austin can attest now, it's not fun. But you can't win it every year. So, I guess you can always take that and be humble about it. Besides that, we saw the NBA playoffs concluding at around the same time. That league is a disgrace, in my opinion. I'm sorry if you like basketball, and I do like basketball. I don't like the way the NBA the style of play in the NBA has gone. I understand that players are going to go less physical, but it's just constant 3-point shooting now. There's no physicality. There's no, if you're shooting cold, you just get up in the paint and try to score some dirty baskets. Instead, you're going to just keep shooting until you make it. And it's no fun when you have the best team in the league is far and above the best team in the league, and no one's even close. The Cavaliers, and like the disparity between the two conferences is just ridiculous. And now we're talking about LeBron James going somewhere else, and it's just, I don't know, it's frustrating, and that's bothersome to me. So I'll always prefer hockey over basketball personally.
For the casual fan, it was not good. I haven't watched a NBA championship game and enjoyed it since the Heat and Thunder matchup back, and I think it was 2012, if I remember correctly. It's just not been fun. Basketball is in a really bad state right now. It might get better since the teams are going to change a little bit, the faces anyway. Probably the Lakers are going to be the next big team, But NBA, not so good at the moment.
Yeah, I would say it was at least watchable for a few years at the end there with the Spurs and Heat, and the first 2 years of the Golden State Warriors and Cleveland Cavaliers. But the last 2 years, the best team in the East, the Cavs, has won one game and has lost 8 to Golden State, and that's ridiculous. It's not fun. It's not exciting. So there's our little tangent on the NBA playoffs. Besides that, I graduated from college, so now I am amongst the rest of the working class. I'm now a mailman out in the small town of Holly, New York. So that's what I'm doing right now. In fact, I work tomorrow, so I have a big boy job now. So it's kind of exciting. I also I have a turtle now. I have a pet turtle. If you can hear what sounds like running water in the background, I apologize for that. That is the filter running on my pet turtle's tank. We're going to be moving. Me and my roommate are going to be moving out of this apartment at the end of next month. So hopefully I'll have him maybe in the living room, so I won't have to have this in my room. But yeah, so it's just another interesting thing that happened. Austin's met him because I actually bought him when I was visiting down on Long Island. And yeah, he's okay. He just likes, he loves food, but then again, all turtles do. And last but not least, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say he's a dope turtle.
He is. He
You didn't
certainly
even say his name, though.
His name is Super Craig. He has many names, but one of them is Super Craig. But it's a South Park reference. You might or might not understand it. But the other name, my buddy was telling me, because you have a hard time telling what young turtles' genders are because they're pretty much the same at a young age. He recommended calling it Pennywise. What'd you think about that?
I think that's a good idea. There you go. Because it's gender neutral.
Exactly.
That's a popular thing nowadays.
That's the 2018 version of its name. So, in any case, the last thing I wanted to mention is that our Instagram page has been posting more. I've been posting pictures from every game this past season, kind of just going through game by game. And right now we're on week 11, the Tennessee Titans game, that big 40-17 win on Thursday night. And you'll go back and you can see the page and see all the highs and lows from the season, and just something to pass the time with this offseason. So just wanted to get to all of that. Now that we're done with that, let's finally get back into the football. So I guess when it comes to the Steelers, the last time we talked, this was right around rookie minicamp, right? Or rookie camp?
Yep, that's exactly when we were talking.
So what we've missed since then are the Steelers, I believe it's optional team activity, or is it organized team activity?
I think it's optional.
Optional team activities, and we've also missed the team's mini camps, which are mandatory. So we've missed that, and we've also missed a couple of injuries. We've seen some uniform updates, some changes in personnel as far as the defense goes, and some other things. But let's start with the NFL's top 100 list, because that just concluded this past week. The Steelers well represented with 6 different players. It's tied for the second most of any team. Let's start from top to bottom, or I guess from bottom to top, really. Clocking in at number 48 was defensive end Cameron Hayward. Just in front of him was Ryan Shazier, the inside linebacker, at 47. At 44 was David DeCastro, who was up a large amount from 97 last year. Ben Roethlisberger moved up to 18 from 22 last year. Le'Veon Bell moved up from number 9 to number 5 this year. And Antonio Brown, who has been number 4 the last 2 years, moved up to number 2. So just, I don't know if you paid any attention to the list at all, or paid attention to where the Steelers players were compared to other players. Do you think these were accurate rankings, if there really can be accurate rankings for something like this? And was there anyone that was omitted?
I think it was interesting that they decided to move both Le'Veon Bell and Ben Roethlisberger up. I think Ben Roethlisberger had a solid second half, but I thought he had a really bad start, which is interesting to me that they moved him up. Like, I thought he could have stayed at his spot at 22, but I'm honestly surprised that he didn't move back at all because of that beginning. Also with Bell, I think, this is really bad to say as a Steelers fan, but I think other teams overrate him a little bit as a running back. He really wasn't that great as a running back, and I'm going to go on a tangent later about why okay. Bell's a great pass catcher in my opinion. He's the best in the league. That's just where it goes. But as a running back, I want my running back to be the best runner. I want him to be the best running back. I know it's a job, it's a position with multiple jobs, and pass catching is a plus, and his pass blocking is one of the best in the league too. But the most important to me is the running, and that really took a hit in my opinion compared to what he was doing the year before. So I'm surprised that they moved him up as well, and I think that his pass catching ability is ranked really high, and it affects how he is. Because like I said, I think he's the best pass catching running back in the league. But still, as for David DeCastro, that was deserved. That was completely deserved. He had probably the best year he's ever had. He was the best guard in the league, in my opinion, this year. And I like that. Antonio Brown, the second best player in the league, and he would have probably been in MVP talks if he didn't go down against the Patriots. So I think that was deserved as well. He came in, he was the second right behind Tom Brady, who was number one. So it basically makes sense. And then Shazier and Hayward got respected. Shazier was maybe a little bit higher than I would have expected. I would have put him more around 60 in the league, but still, and Cameron Hayward was a beast, so I think he belonged. As for anyone getting snubbed, I don't really think so. I know I love Mike Hilton, but he hasn't really established himself in the league yet to make it onto the list. And he's really the only person on the team that didn't make it that I could even make an argument for. I really couldn't think of anyone else who was like, well, they are definitely among the top 100 players in the entire league. So what do you think on all of these picks?
My apologies. If you heard a clicking in the background, that was the turtle attempting to bite the thermometer I have in the tank, so I had a little emergency there. What did you say?
I was just asking you what you thought of the list of where everyone was ranked and stuff, and if you thought anyone got omitted from the list.
Oh, okay. I felt like the list was pretty accurate for most people. I'll agree with you as far as understanding why Ben Roethlisberger could have dropped, or the same for Lev Bell. I will say that regarding Roethlisberger, I think that people are going to remember what they last saw. So I think they're going to remember the fact that he threw 450 yards and 5 touchdowns against the Jaguars defense in the playoffs. Maybe that's what kind of pushed him ahead, but I'm not sure what led Bell to go up for more positions. I don't really know what he did better this year than he did, the year before, as aside from pass blocking. Don't get me wrong, he's talented and he's good, but I'm not sure I understand that. The only player I think that got omitted is a player that I think in years past has been overrated, but I think is now being underrated, and that's Maurkice Pouncey. He might not be as good as he used to be, and he might have been a little overrated in the past, but he's still probably the most athletic center in the league, and he can do things that really no other center can do. And he's a very valuable player that can kind of act almost as like a fullback from the center position. I think that's just very valuable to have. So I think Pouncey is someone that should have been at least on the list. And I think he was a notable omission, but the only omission, really. We talked about OTAs and minicamp. Some of the storylines, I guess there's a few, so we'll kind of jumble them together and just give me your thoughts on them. So first and foremost, third-round pick Mason Rudolph, the quarterback from Oklahoma State, apparently was turning a lot of heads at camp this year. And, does that give him steam to possibly become the backup going into the season? And if not, then when will he be the backup? A big deal was made of Antonio Brown and Ben Roethlisberger, who missed all but I think 3 or 4 OTA practices. Tyler Matakevich was the starter next to Vince Williams as an inside linebacker in camp. And what is going on at the safety position? Beyond that, James Conner was apparently another player that was really good at OTAs. He dropped some more weight. So along with the running backs, what's it going to take to make Bell's absence this offseason less noticeable?
Well, I'm going to start with the Mason Rudolph thing. And mark my words, he's going to be the number 2 quarterback by the end of the year. He may not start the season as the number 2, but he's going to finish that way. I really think that it may even come into the playoffs where, I mean, this is I guess you really don't know that unless they release on the depth chart, but he's going to play that last game, week 17, and he is going to be so great, at least this is what I'm hoping for, that he becomes the backup for the rest of the playoffs, assuming that the Steelers make it there. But then as for Brown and Roethlisberger missing most of OTAs, I'm fine with that. It's not worth it to show up. You just look at what happened to the Chargers. Hunter Henry was set for a big year being the premier tight end, and he suffered a season-ending injury right at the beginning of OTAs. It's just not worth it for guys who don't really need to learn much and definitely don't need to be evaluated. It's just not worth it to show up at all. So, moving on from there, really the only other thing I wanted to address was that the Tyler Matakevich thing. That was a surprise to me. I knew the Steelers liked him. I knew the Steelers liked him a lot and said that his shoulder injury was holding him back this year. It's just interesting that they're not giving John Bostic it right off the bat. I guess they like their inside guys more, and I'm going to trust it for now. Just for everything else, the James Conner news isn't really big to me because he's not going to play that much. So, I mean, maybe if he's replacing Bell, this is going to be big news in next season if James Conner is doing well, depending on the outcome of what happens to Le'Veon Bell. But, and then the safety position, I have no idea what's happening. I think we need to wait for training camp and all of that to happen to figure out what's even remotely happening with that, because there's just so many pieces in that puzzle that's way too hard to try and understand now. But what do you want to talk about here?
All right, well, furthermore with your point, what makes you think Rudolph is going to be the number 2 quarterback by the end of the year, and where do you think that's going to happen?
Week 17. Week 7, it's literally going to be at the end of the year. The Steelers are about to head into the playoffs, and then they're going to move him up on the depth chart after he has a Week 17 performance that blows people out of the water. At least that's what I'm hoping for.
So you think it's going to
really
be... Go ahead.
I'm sorry, what?
I was just going to say, you think it's going to be that good that they're going to change it that late in the season?
Yep, it's because it's going to be their first time being able to evaluate him. They know what they have with Landry Jones. I mean, they're going to have the preseason, of course, but preseason is nothing to the real game. And when he gets into the real game, I think he's going to light it up in Week 17 and just take over as number 2 going on into the next year, really.
All right, fair enough. I personally still doubt there's a point this season where you can look at him and say, I have a better chance of winning a football game with this offense and this team than Landry Jones, but time will tell. Like you said, Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown missing most of OTAs is completely inconsequential. They're optional for a reason, and when you've got 2 guys that have been in the offense for as long as they've been, especially Roethlisberger, who's getting older, he really doesn't need to be there. The new wrinkles in the offense are things that he'll still have time to learn, and same with Antonio Brown. Brown is, 29, 30 years old now? He's entering his 8th year in the league, I believe. He knows what he's doing. Let's back down there. I don't believe we should be that surprised that Matakevich is starting right now, just because he does know the... Sorry, I said offense. I was thinking offense, but defense better than John Bostic. Let's be honest here. It's probably going to change before Week 1, but at the same time, you have to remember that the Steelers coaching staff was very upset that Matakevich got hurt the same quarter Ryan Shazier suffered his injury. They really believe it would have been different. Really, the rest of that season would have been different had Matakevich played at full strength, which I don't know if I necessarily believe, but, I guess we'll never know. And then as far as Connor goes, he looked great, and that's good, but it's not going to mean anything until he plays meaningful snaps this season, if he does, because he didn't play many last season, and I'll be more interested to see how he does in pass protection and if he can actually stay healthy for a season, which he hasn't done completely since his sophomore season at Pitt, which is... What are we talking about now? Last year was his rookie year. Senior, junior... We're talking 4 years ago now, so that's quite a good deal of time. So I'll believe it when I see it is basically what I'm getting at. And then as far as the safety position goes, your guess is as good as mine. It sounded like they were originally Their plan was to have Burnett start at free safety and then keep Davis at strong safety. Then quotes from Tom Bradley, the defensive backs coach, and Keith Butler, the defensive coordinator, were more like, well, we don't have a strong and free safety. We have a left and right safety. But then Davis made it sound like the responsibilities of the two positions were different because he seemed frustrated. And he was like, I don't know where I am. Just put me somewhere so I can learn something. So it sounds like a mess right now, and I'm sure they'll figure it out, but I hope they do it sooner rather than later. I do think they'll end up pushing Sean Davis to free safety, which I hope he'll thrive, because this will be the third position change for him in 3 years, and that's just not good. But Morgan Burnett will probably fit in best at strong safety. All right, moving on from OTAs, the Steelers' long-anticipated alternate jerseys have finally been revealed. They are throwbacks to the 1978 and 1979 home jerseys with the block numbers. These jerseys haven't been worn since the 1996 season, the year I was born. In that season, the Steelers won their division, went 10-6, and lost in the playoffs. So that was a long time ago. That was actually Jerome Bettis' first year in Pittsburgh, to give you a perspective on how long ago that was. What do you think about the Steelers bringing them back today, and were you disappointed they didn't bring back a different jersey?
All that hype building up to it, it just didn't do much for me. It's not flashy enough for what I was hoping. I was hoping for the Batman jerseys, or at least something that was noticeable to non-Steelers fans, like the old Bumblebee jerseys or something. I'm not excited. When I think of a throwback jersey, I want something that would be flashy, something, whether it be ugly, whether it be like, what jersey is that? Like, I don't even recognize the team. Like, when I say that, I think of, like, the Green Bay Packers throwback jerseys, which have, like, a circle around their number and they're yellow and blue. Like, it's just, I don't know, this is boring to me. Like, I'm not going to buy this jersey. If someone gets this jersey, I'm hardly going to notice it as a Steelers fan myself. And then it's just like, who else is going to notice that you got a throwback jersey? It's just, I don't know. I was bored. I was immediately like, wow, this is what they waited. They said they were going to reveal it in April, and then they waited till, what was it, May or June? No, they said they were going to reveal it in May, and they ended up revealing it in early June. I was like, this is what I was so hyped up for. I was just disappointed. What did you think of it?
I'll take a different angle on it, and I'll say that I think most of the people that really like it are the people who were old enough to remember the Steelers when they originally wore those numbers, and I'm not one of those people, but I've seen a lot of video and I've seen a lot of different media from when the Steelers wore those numbers, and I can appreciate them going back to those numbers. Like you said, I don't really expect it to be a big hit outside of Pittsburgh. They're not all that different from the standard home jerseys the Steelers have had since 1997, but I am glad they decided to go for a little bit of a change. I do understand, though, that it's not really much of a change. It makes me wonder if the Steelers are heading in a direction where they might make this a permanent jersey change at some point. Have you thought about that at all?
I mean, maybe they go back and change their jersey completely. I mean, I guess that would be cool, but still, I don't know. Still a sort of like not a lateral change, but not much different.
Yeah, I understand that. At the very least, the Steelers will be wearing their Color Rush uniforms again, so we have that to look forward to. I didn't mention before, Austin, for my graduation gift, got me a signed Barry Foster jersey that has the same type of block numbers you were talking about. And Austin, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you once again. And it's hanging up in my closet right now, but once I move, I intend on displaying it on the wall, either in my room or in the living room.
No problem, buddy. Definitely cool. Definitely cool thing.
Barry Foster, by the way, for those who don't know, was a Steelers running back in the early 90s. To this day, still holds the team record for most single-season rushing yards in team history. 1,600 something. I'll have to check that number again, but very cool. I'll have it posted on our Instagram page later this summer as well. I'm sorry, Austin. Could you get to the next point? The Turtles biting the thermometer again.
No problem. Well, Gerald Hawkins and Jake McGee had season-ending injuries in OTAs, and really that's upsetting and it's bittersweet. I really shouldn't call it sweet at all, but I mean, in terms of how the Steelers drafted, it makes it look better. I thought Jake McGee could make a run for the tight end 3 spot after Xavier Greenwell didn't really do much last year, so it's a shame that his season is over. And this basically solidifies the tight end group we have, unless the tight end that we got from England, which his name is escaping me right now, unless he makes a run. He's a really big tight end, but I really doubt it. I highly doubt that guy from Rugby is going to make it as a tight end here and challenge Xavier Grimble for the 3 spot. As for Gerald Hawkins, it's a shame. It really is. It makes the Steelers draft look better. Again, that's what I meant by that, because the Steelers drafted Chukwuma Okorafor, and he is now going to immediately get a backup spot just because of that injury. He is going to be one of the tackles coming in. I mean, you have to imagine Matt Filer is going to be making making the roster for sure now as well, and then Okorafor is also going to make it, I would think. It makes the Steelers draft look better when I was mad about that tackle being drafted in the 3rd round, but it still sucks because Gerald Hawkins just hasn't been able to really beat the injury bug. He was playing for a little bit last year, but he got injured in his first season, and now he's out for basically probably the rest of this season, most of it at least. He's probably going to go on IR, and I doubt they're going to designate him to return with Matt Filer and Chukwuma Okorafor there, so we'll see what it is. Do you have anything to add on that?
No, I think you got it pretty well. It's been disappointing with the way that Hawkins' career has gone so far. It seems like he's really fallen out of favor with the coaching staff lately, too. And as far as McGee goes, yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of hope for the number 3 tight end position. Grimble was kind of disappointing last year, and McGee showed that he could block, so I was kind of hoping maybe there could be a change there, but alas, it was not meant to be. The player you were thinking of from England is Christian Scotland Williamson, the 2 last names. I remembered his first name was Christian, so I had to look it up, but that's who you were thinking of, the 6'9", 275-pound tight end, right?
Yes, that's exact. See, I remember Christian too, but I didn't want to. I couldn't remember the rest.
That's totally understandable. Let's talk about the other update at minicamp with the defense. The big news that everyone was talking about, originally it was thought to be more of a rotational, every now and then we'll try it thing, to all of a sudden now it could be a permanent position switch. TJ Watt and Bud Dupree are reportedly flipping sides on defense, where Watt was the right outside linebacker. He'll now be the left outside linebacker, and Dupree will be flipping from the left to the right side. What do you make of all this? Because on one hand, they were talking about how it could help Dupree as a pass rusher, yet on the other hand, the right outside linebacker has been dropping into coverage more than the left outside linebacker the last 5 years. So, what do you make of all of it? How did the Steelers make this work?
I'm really just hoping it creates better matchups for their skill sets. They had T.J. Watt drop back a lot on the other side, which he was good at, and they may use him more as a pass rusher now and drop Dupree back more. But we will see. I really hope it just helps Bud Dupree's production, whether they choose to drop him back more or use him as a pass rusher more, as we've been basically preaching about for the past season and a half. But he needs a great breakout year like we thought we were going to get 2 years ago, where he came out screaming in the Bills game and looked like he was really having his breakout year. But this might be Bud Dupree's last season. If he doesn't show up, the Steelers are probably not going to offer an extension that's big enough to his needs if he doesn't show something more than just averageness. He's definitely no Jarvis Jones. Don't get me wrong. He's already done better than Jarvis Jones. But it's just, he's still not he's just average at best from what I've seen from him. So I'm going to hope for some stuff out of him. What are you hoping for, seeing them switching sides?
Well, I'm hoping my turtle is going to stop being is going to stop interrupting this podcast. But aside from that, as far as them switching sides, I kind of almost hope that in this state of positionless football that the Steelers decide to kind of... See, I don't see this happening, but in an ideal world, I would almost have them flip sides wherever the tight end is. So my thought is, Austin, tell me what you think about this. The Steelers line up Watt over wherever the strong side is. So wherever the tight end is, put him there because he can either run with the tight end or drop or can rush the passer from there. And then Dupree can always get the weak side and he can focus more on rushing the passer. What do you think about that?
That's interesting, but what what are they doing on, like, what if they go into hurry-up offense and it's just quick, like they just have to commit to the side they're on that came back from?
Well, in that case, they have to stay on the same side, but, I mean, I don't know, it's something, because when I played, now granted, this is obviously different, I'm not trying to compare high school to the pros, but when we were playing, I know this is how they used to do it in the pros, is that they used to have the strong side offensive lineman move to the left or right side depending on where the tight end was. So I was the strong side tackle. We would line up on the right side if the tight end was on the right side. If he was on the left side, me and the left guard, or me and the strong side guard would go to the left side, and the two linemen on the left side would go to the right. So I don't know if that's something that makes sense in this positionless state of football we're getting to, but it's something I've thought about. And beyond that, as far as the whole dropping thing goes, I still think they're going to end up dropping Dupree a good amount, but I think they're just going to flip it more, and so Watt will continue to drop more. I don't know if it's really going to make a difference for Dupree, but obviously we hope it does. So that's where I'll leave it. We had our initial 53-man roster predictions. Austin, you want to talk a little bit about some of the players you had making it? I mean, I think we know a good amount of the players who made it, but highlight some players that might be bubble players in a lot of people's eyes.
Sure. The places where we have a little bit of question marks for me are running back, wide receiver, defensive lineman, and defensive back. That's where I feel like my picks are the most controversial. Also linebacker. I'm sorry. It's just not highlighted, but linebacker is controversial because of how I distributed the amount of linebackers. But for running back, the four I think are going to make it are Le'Veon Bell, James Conner, Fitzgerald Toussaint, and Rosie Nix. The controversy comes in that the Steelers drafted Jalen Samuels in this past draft, and he's been a guy of all trades, jack of all trades. It's just he can play tight end, probably not in the NFL, but he has done it in college. He can play running back. He's done it in college. That's what he was drafted as. He can play fullback. He did that in college, and he's also done a little bit of kick returning and punch returning, a tiny bit. That is definitely not translating into the NFL. I mean, I might eat my words, but he doesn't have the speed for that, in my opinion, and he wasn't very good at it in college, so I can't imagine them really using him in the NFL. And that's why Fitzgerald Toussaint is making, in my opinion, because Fitzgerald Toussaint, he's not been great at kick returning. He's not been that electric guy that the Steelers need, but he has experience doing it. He's also had experience playing in an NFL game, and he's had experience even playing in the playoffs. I just think that with his experience, he should make it over Jalen Samuels, especially since Samuels is a pretty mediocre at everything he does. It's just he does a lot, but he's not going to make it as a tight end in NFL anymore. Now he's small. Compared to the rest of his competition, he's small. And it's just, we have a fullback, so it's not like Jalen, I mean, you could sub out Rosie Nix and put Jalen Samuels and Le'Veon Bell there, but, like, why would you do that when Roosevelt Nix is a pretty great fullback, in my opinion, at least? And it's just like, James Conner is going to be the number 2 back. James Conner is a change-of-pace back that I feel would be better. So where does Jalen Samuels fit in? If I don't think he can do kick returning and punt returning, where does he fit in? And that's why I had to put Toussaint in there. Toussaint has experience at kick returning and punt returning, and he could be a 3rd-and-1 back, like we saw. Oh my gosh, his name is escaping me. Can you help me? The back, Terrell Watson. Terrell Watson came in for 3rd-and-1 last year, and it was just on that specific scenario, and they always used him. I think Fitzgerald Toussaint could do that. Now, as for wide receiver I have a little bit, it's a little bit mucky right now. So right now I have 6 wide receivers making it. Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington, all pretty obvious. And this is where it gets pretty odd. I have Justin Hunter, Quadri Henderson, and Darius Hayward-Bay. I really wanted to make Marcus Tucker get there, but I couldn't. I know that the Steelers just love Justin Hunter for some reason. And if you've been listening to the podcast, you know I absolutely hate Justin Hunter. I think it should be Marcus Tucker's time, but I think that the Steelers love Justin Hunter too much, and they're going to have him. As for Darius Hayward-Bay, I think his special teams contribution is just so much. I was thinking of moving him for Marcus Tucker too, but then the Steelers don't have a special teams ace like Darius Hayward-Bay, or a gunner, who's as fast. I mean, he's the 8th fastest Steeler in history. Like, I was reading an article the other day. He's the 8th fastest Steeler of all time. Like, you can't really just get rid of that. And as for Quadri Henderson, I think that his kick returning and punt returning is well needed for the Steelers. His abilities in college were amazing. He was a great returner at Pitt. I think that they can use him, now that they got rid of Martavis Bryant, I think he becomes more valuable because Martavis Bryant was great on screens and those jet sweeps and those little tosses that he ran out from the backfield for. I think Quadri Henderson is that great kind of gadget player that can replace Martavis Bryant in those special situations on wide receiver screens and all that jazz. So I think that he's not only going to be a great kick returner and punt returner the Steelers have desperately needed for years, he's going to contribute on offense. And where Martavis Bryant, the whole Martavis Bryant left, he can fill in. And him and James Washington are going to make up for what Martavis Bryant left, in my opinion. After that, the only interesting thing about linebacker that I have is that I only have the Steelers carrying 4 outside linebackers, and it's because of this positionless football that we're heading towards. I have T.J. Watt, Bud Dupree, Anthony Chickalow, and Keon Adams. The rest of the Steelers linebackers, the outside ones, they've never played in NFL games. They're guys that went undrafted and stuff, and I couldn't give it to them. And then thinking about it, I wanted to add another defensive back. So instead of adding a 5th outside linebacker, I added an 11th defensive back instead. And that leads me to the defensive backs, where I have Mike Hilton, Joe Hayden, Artie Burns, Cameron Sutton, Brian Allen, Cody Sensabaugh, Terrell Edmonds, Sean Davis, Morgan Burnett, Marcus Allen, and Nat Burr. And that is 5 safeties. I added Mr. Marcus Allen back at the last second, and because I thought he would contribute. I actually added Cody Sensabaugh, the cornerback, because I thought the Steelers would still use him as a backup. Marcus Allen was my second to last added person to my defensive back from. And I think that the Steelers are going towards this more positionless football. We've been talking about it for this past offseason. And I think that the Steelers needed to carry 5 safeties, and I think they're going to use more cornerbacks. Cameron Sutton could play both safety and cornerback. He said he's capable and he can do it. The Steelers loved Brian Allen last year. I think that they bring him back and keep a roster spot for him. He's going to be another year of mostly being inactive, but I think he's going to be there. And then basically all these safeties and even maybe the cornerbacks might play a few positions. I think the safeties are going to be used as linebackers on certain plays, and that's why I took away from an outside linebacker, because I think some of these safeties are going to fill in as outside linebackers some of the time. Now, moving on to defensive line, the only thing is the question of, is it going to be McCullers or is it going to be Joshua Frazier? Now, I picked Frazier. I think that McCullers, even though he's been loved by the Steelers, I think he's done. I think Frazier is going to prove that he has more use. He can be used more. I think that he didn't get to show his full potential at Alabama because he was a backup, and I think that he might be a sleeper. I think he might be the Steelers' sleeper in this draft because he was basically drafted as mostly a backup at Alabama. He didn't get to really play much. That's why he was such a late round pick, is because you don't really know what you're going to get. And I think it might work out in the Steelers' favor here as he makes the roster. It might contribute a little bit. But I think that's really it for all the weird things. Oh, yeah. One more thing. Inside linebacker, I have 5. And the 5th one, I think you can get all 4 of the starters. The 5th one is Matthew Thomas. Matthew Thomas, I think, makes it because the Steelers still need inside linebacker depth. And I think that he was the only one that was good enough to make it. He showed potential. He had a bad track record, which is why he didn't get drafted. But I think that he's been turning heads a little bit, and I think he's going to make the roster at the end of the day. Him, with the other inside linebackers, John Bostic, Vince Williams, Tyler Matakevich, and LJ Fort, I think he's going to be a room of 5 inside linebackers So that's really all I had that was interesting about my roster predictions. You want to go over some of your interesting roster predictions in some of your positions?
Sure. I'll cover the position groups that are pretty straightforward. So specialists are pretty straightforward. Boswell, Berry, Canada. Linebackers, offensive linemen, we had the 5 starters plus BJ Finney, Chukwuma Okorafor, and Matt Filer. The tight ends, McDonald, James, and Grimble. And quarterback, Roethlisberger, Rudolph, and Jones. So running back, I decided to keep Stevan Ridley over Fitzgerald Toussaint. And I don't necessarily want this to happen. I just feel like the Steelers have done a lot to try to replace Toussaint over the last few years, including cutting him last year in favor of Terrell Watson. I hope I'm wrong, but I just have a feeling they're going to cut him here. I also had Eli Rogers and Marcus Tucker in at the wide receiver position to make 6 to go along with DHB, James Washington, AB, and Juju. My reasoning is that for Eli Rogers, I've seen his Instagram live videos before, him working at the Steelers facility, so that leads me to believe he's going to be signed at some point. Marcus Tucker, look, the way I see it is that the Steelers, this is his 3rd offseason with the team. They love him enough that they want him around. And I'm sorry, but Justin Hunter hasn't done anything. He had 3 catches last year and just did not impress whatsoever. So I think that this will be the year Marcus Tucker usurps him from the roster and he makes the team. And I hope he shows a little bit something this year. As far as the defense goes, I decided to keep Daniel McCullers as opposed to Joshua Frazier just because I feel like the Steelers may decide at the end of the day that they feel like they can keep Frazier on the practice squad. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Austin is right and that he makes the roster over McCullers, but I just feel like right now McCullers is going to make it. At linebacker, I also have Matthew Thomas, and I also have Arthur Moat signing, so that means a total of 10 with Bostic, Williams, Matakevich, LJ Fort, TJ Watt, Bud Dupree, Anthony Chickalo, Thomas, Keon Adams, and now Arthur Moats, who I have a feeling will be signing as well, just because there's no depth at the outside linebacker position right now. So I feel like he will sign at some point. And that really is it for right now. The defensive backside, 10, Joe Hayden, Artie Burns, Mike Hilton, Cam Sutton, Brian Allen, Morgan Burnett, Sean Davis, Nat Burray, Terrell Edmonds, and Marcus Allen. So pretty straightforward, but then again, no one saw Joe Hayden making the active roster last year either after a free agent signing, so we'll have to see. Let's move on to NFL news. Breaking news as of, I believe, yesterday or today, the Eagles linebacker Nigel Bradden was suspended 1 game. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, he's suspended for the Falcons game, which is actually pretty significant, as the Falcons and Eagles matched up in the playoffs last year, and it was a pretty solid game, actually. It turned out to be pretty good. And Bradham has been one of the Eagles' best pass rushers, believe it or not. So this is actually a big suspension. I always think that the Falcons are overrated, so I think the Eagles coming in back with Carson Wentz, it should be fine regardless, but it is still a big loss for them, as Bradham was one of the biggest contributors on their defense. So there's that. And after that, former wide receiver Terrell Owens said he won't be attending his Hall of Fame ceremony this August. He will be the first living player to not attend the ceremony for themselves. What do you think of this move? Is it a good move? Do you hate it? Is it bad?
Well, let me say this much. I am not a Terrell Owens fan, and this dates back for about as long as I've known him as a player. I actually have a story to share with you. It's not my story. It's my dad's story. There's a local supermarket chain up here called Wegmans in upstate New York and around the Northeast. My dad used to be a front-end and assistant manager at one of the local Wegmans stores. The year Terrell Owens was on the Buffalo Bills, 2009. The Bills had training camp practice in Pittsford, New York, which is where I'm from and where we lived at the time. He was working overnight, and Owens decided to travel down the street to this local Wegmans by himself late at night. And he bought a few things for himself. He bought some of his own jerseys. He bought some candy. He bought some condoms. That's not important, but he was leaving, and apparently one of the helping hands guys was trying to help him with all the stuff that he was getting, and he wasn't pestering him or anything. He was just trying to be nice, and I guess T.O. just ignored him. Like, completely didn't even say anything to him, just acted like he was not there. Now, I'm not saying that to be like, oh, T.O. is, just, it's like, oh, look at this, I have a story about T.O. That's kind of, you can kind of believe that. Wouldn't you believe that about something he would do?
Yeah, that sounds like a Terrell Owens thing to do, yep.
So that's just kind of the person he was his whole time in the NFL. He threw every quarterback he ever played with under the bus. He always ended up being kind of like a locker room cancer. So I never really liked who he was off the field or in the locker room. Now, I will say he was one of the most talented wide receivers that ever played. I mean, he's got the statistics, and he played one of his best games ever with a darn near broken leg, I believe, or broken ankle against the Patriots in Super Bowl 39. He was a terrific player, and he should have been voted into the Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility. He should have been. The reason he was not is because of the type of teammate he was, which is just absolutely ludicrous. And I kind of understand him not wanting to go and deciding not to go, but I can't help but feel like it's more him just giving the NFL the middle finger instead. And that just seems like the more traditional T.O. look. And I'm torn because on one hand, I want him to do that to the writers and the voters who kept him out for no good reason, because the voters are making it about themselves when they're not voting him in based on what he did off the field or in the locker room as opposed to on the field, which is what it's about when you're a player. But at the same time, I feel like this isn't going to help him at all. Maybe he would have had a chance to amend things, and it's not right that the voters did that, but maybe he would have had a chance to sort of fix some of the things that were problems when he was in the league, and then maybe it could have helped his legacy. I don't know. I'm kind of torn on it. I see both sides of it, but what do you think about it?
It's really just a T.O. move altogether. However, the man got disrespected for 2 years by the NFL voters. Every normal person thought he should have been voted in his first year eligible, and definitely everybody in his second, myself included. They let his character hold him back from making it into the Hall of Fame, and to me that is trash when he is at or near the top of almost every receiving category there is. It's the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It should be based on their performance on the football field and nothing more and nothing less. So, I mean, it was disrespectful for the voters to keep him out for 2 years, and I think that this is basically something that he would do, and I think I like the move personally. I think that he should be mad that NFL voters have bias like that and don't just like look at the stats and like how his catches were and stuff like that. They're looking at his character, and that's not part of a football statistic. So that's what I think on that one.
Let me ask you, would O.J. Simpson make the Hall of Fame today?
Would he make the... Oh, my God, no.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus, no. Nobody would let him. They're just... The NFL cares too much about their face, and that people would just, from the outside, be like, you're taking a guy that was a murderer, and you're making him a Pro Football Hall of Famer. Like, everyone would take it wrong. They wouldn't, because that's exactly what people think. They're like, oh, so you're respecting this man that did something wrong outside of football? It's the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which I would understand if he made the Pro Football Hall of Fame now, because I would think, okay, as a football player, he was great. I could separate what he did outside of football and what he did inside of football and say, okay, O.J. Simpson is a bad person, but he was a great football player. Like, it's just... but people can't do that. People just have to put the person as one entity and one being. And it's like, oh, so you're respecting this person that did this? Never would fly today. Never would fly at all. What do you think?
I agree with you. I was kind of curious because not that Terrell Owens and O.J. Simpson are the same person by any means necessary. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just, I guess it was kind of extreme. It was the first thing I could think, well, maybe someone controversial, I guess, kind of. I guess Ray Lewis might be too, but that's a little different. In any case, let's move on to the impending suspension for Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback Jameis Winston. Oh, you know what I've realized? We never even talked about a couple of other things. We completely missed
The Martavis Bryant thing. I was going to wrap around to it.
That, and we also missed the update in the Lev Bell contract stuff. So let's get to the Bell's contract first. So basically, from what we understand, it sounds like they're a little closer on a deal than we originally thought. Is a deal actually going to get done here?
No, it's not. I mean, Le'Veon Bell on his top 100 video, or no, not on his top 100 video, on the actual stage, he came on and him and Antonio Brown were talking and stuff, and they were asking him questions, and he said that he is confident the deal will get done by July, but they've been saying that since last year. They're like, oh, we're confident the deal will get done by such and such date, and this. The one good thing going for them is Le'Veon Bell still holds, because he repeated himself, that the two sides are closer than they were last year. And that's not necessarily, going to mean anything. Just because they're closer, I mean, he said much closer, to be fair, but just because they're closer doesn't mean Le'Veon Bell's going to take it. Le'Veon Bell is not going to take anything less than $14.5 million a year, as he said, and the Steelers are probably not willing, or actually obviously not willing to give him $14.5 million a year, which is understandable for a running back market where the way it is right now. So I don't think a deal is going to get done because Le'Veon Bell is not selling less for 14.5, and I don't really want the Steelers to go 14.5, and I think they have their wits about them that they're not going to go 14.5 million a year. So there's that. What do you think?
Boy, I really hope we don't wake up like a couple days before the season, before the deadline, and it's like, oh, he signed a 5-year deal or whatever. It's like, he's got an average annual value of like 14.5. I would just be really disappointed to hear that. The Steelers have played this perfectly, excuse me, exactly as they should have the last 2 years. Step by step, they've done it so well. This is exactly how they should have done it. They should have gone year by year, which is costly, but it's better than committing long-term to a guy who has injury history, a position at running back that by nature slows down just about at this point in his career, and someone that's been suspended twice for drug suspensions or drug-related issues. So I think the Steelers should continue to stay away from this. I think that would just be a mistake to sign him long-term. And I like him as a player, but there's too much risk involved right now. So I think the Steelers are right to continue to not reach a long-term deal. Do not, cave to his demands. Stay where you are. And if he really wants to test the market, let him test it. And let's see how that pans out for the other team. So the Steelers have played this right so far. Just keep playing it right. And then the suspension you mentioned. Now Oakland Raiders wide receiver Martavis Bryant is now reportedly facing another drug-related suspension. There aren't many details at this time, but it would likely be an indefinite suspension if it is drug-related, similar to Josh Gordon's from a few years ago, where he would not be able to apply for reinstatement until after a full season. The Raiders gave up a third-round pick for Bryant in the draft 2 months ago. Wow. The Steelers dodged a bullet, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, the Steelers finessed the heck out of the Raiders. Imagine that the Steelers kept Martavis and didn't draft James Washington, and just this was about to hit. I think we would have been losing our minds. I think as Steelers fans, after all the stuff we put out with Martavis Bryant, with all his fiancée or his wife, I can't remember which, wife said and what he said on social media, whether it be bashing teammates or bashing the team or saying all that stuff, I think we would have lost it. Instead, we get a bright spot. We get to be happy, a little bit happier that third-round pick went to, I forget which one it was. I don't remember if it was Mason Rudolph or Chukwuma Okorafor. But we get to be a little happier, even though we were upset at the time, that we got that third-round pick instead of having another wide receiver that was about to get suspended with Martavis Bryant. So I think we could be happy about that. The Steelers finessed the heck out of the Raiders because everyone said the Steelers couldn't get more than a fifth-round pick on a one-year rental, and no one was going to give that up. No one was even going to give up a fifth round. And you see what we got? Third-round pick from the Raiders because John Gruden is a terrible head coach. But to be fair, the Steelers said they didn't know nothing about it. And I believe them. I actually believe that they didn't know because Martavis Bryant said he was turning over a new leaf and so on and so forth. Pretty little lies just so, you don't get cut by an NFL team. But, drug tests will get you every time. They don't lie. So, this is not fantastic news, but this is I'll call it fantastic news. This is fantastic news that the Steelers trade him and got such a high-round pick for it. So what do you think?
They managed to get the pick that they traded to get Mason Rudolph. That's what it was. Because remember, they traded up for Rudolph.
You're right.
The way I see it is this could have gone down one of two ways. Mike Tomlin gave John Gruden a harsh welcome back to the NFL by tricking him kind of into taking Bryant for a third rounder before the suspension, and now their relationship is strained. Or number two, which I think is far more likely, Martavis Bryant pulled the wool over both the Steelers and the Raiders' eyes by convincing them that he had, as you said, turned over a new leaf, and he was clearly lying, and the Steelers got really lucky. But either way, the Steelers look really great for this, and all James Washington has to do now is what? Catch a pass for this to be a win now. If Bryant is suspended, I mean, the Steelers win regardless. I don't think there's a way the Steelers lose, even maybe unless the only way it would be a win for the Raiders here is if James Washington never plays a snap for the Steelers, or never plays a down in the NFL, and Bryant somehow comes back and contributes at all. I don't see that happening. The Steelers won this unanimously, for sure. All right, let's move on back. We were talking about Jameis Winston. He allegedly harassed an Uber driver this past year and has been suspended 3 games for it. He'll appeal it, I believe, is what he was saying. So what do you think is going to be going on here?
He actually is not going to be appealing it, because I was reading a bunch of articles. He made a deal with the NFL, and the NFL made a deal with him. The details don't get released, so we're never going to know what exactly happened. We're never going to know the full details of the case, but he just has to take this 3-game suspension, basically, from what I heard. That was part of the deal. The NFL keeps quiet, and he keeps his name and stuff, and he has to just take this suspension. And if anything happens again, he can be suspended indefinitely. So that was part of the deal. So he is definitely, okay, I shouldn't say definitely, because maybe I'm wrong and maybe he'll end up appealing, but more than likely he's going to be out for the Steelers game week 3. So this suspension took a long time to arrive, but it's Fitzmagic time in Tampa Bay, at least for the beginning of the season. I think that Winston will not appeal its suspension, as I said. So I think that game still smells like a classic Mike Tomlin loss from here. Week 3 against the Bears, the classic Mike Tomlin loss, and last season. And I think this season, week 3 against the Buccaneers, with Ryan Fitzmagic leading the way, might be that classic Mike Tomlin loss. Because, I mean, it doesn't just smell that way. Don't you just think so?
Yeah, I completely agree, and I have nothing more to say because now I don't even want to. Well, it's not even time to talk about that yet.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Alrighty, last but not least, let's talk about David Carr. Let's talk about the top quarterbacks in the NFL. Let's not even talk about the ones from last season. Let's talk just about David Carr and his top 10 quarterback list, which includes the likes of Cam Newton, Jimmy Garoppolo, and not Ben Roethlisberger or Carson Wentz. And the list top to bottom, 1 is Tom Brady, 2 is Aaron Rodgers, 3 is Drew Brees, 4 is Derek Carr. Keep in mind the article was written by David Carr, his older brother. Number 5 was Russell Wilson. Number 6, Matthew Stafford. Number 7, Phillip Rivers. Number 8, Matt Ryan. And then 9 and 10 are Newton and Garoppolo. So what's going on with this list? Where did David Carr go wrong?
There's an obvious bias here. He picked his brother at number 4, and it's just, he's coming from a pretty bad season from the Raiders. It was a pretty average year. I shouldn't say it was super bad, but it's still, he didn't have a year like he did two seasons ago. 2 seasons ago, that might have been an okay ranking, but now it's just not after the last season just came off. He shouldn't be in top 10, and if he is, it's going to be super 10, you reached. But then I have always said this, but Cam Newton is beyond overrated. I mentioned this earlier, how I was going to go on a tangent about this, but he's a great runner, but only an average quarterback when it comes to anything that has to do with throwing. And to me, that's the most important. He is the only quarterback out of the top 32 of another list that has, he's one of the two that has under 60% completion rate. That's not good. Having under 60% completion rate last season is not good. And he's just flashy as a runner, and people don't care about anything else. It's just they see his running ability, and I will agree, he is one of the best mobile quarterbacks there are, at least definitely in this league right now. But it's just, as a quarterback, what I want out of my quarterback is to be able to throw and connect to wide receivers. And sure, he doesn't have the best cast. He didn't have the best cast with him. Greg Olson was hurt for a lot of last season. They traded away Kelvin Benjamin, who wasn't even doing anything anyway. Funchess was starting to actually break out as a wide receiver. So, I mean, I actually can't disrespect him, but they didn't really have anything else after that. So I can give him that. But there's just so many other quarterbacks that make it work, that have trash and just still have okay-ish numbers and just are still good as a quarterback. I just think he's inaccurate. I just don't think he's that good as a thrower. Then moving on, Garoppolo being on this list is a disgrace in itself, but just putting him over Carson Wentz is just another question mark. I just don't understand Carr's thinking process, to be honest with you, because Garoppolo started, 10 games, and Carson Wentz started, I can't even remember. I can't even take a guess on that.
I can tell you.
They started about the same. I'm sorry, what?
Wentz played in 13 games last year. Garoppolo has started 10 in his entire career.
Okay. See, that's even worse. Okay, I'm sorry. I said Garoppolo started 10 games this past season. That is not true. He started 5 games. And they're just, so with that being said, if you're going to put one of them on the list, it's got to be Carson Wentz. He was having an MVP season when he was playing in the first 13 games. And maybe Carson Wentz is a little overrated, but not like anything super crazy. Jimmy Garoppolo was what? He threw 5 touchdowns and I can't remember. I feel like it was 7 interceptions. I want to bring it up in a second.
Garoppolo had 7 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. You know, Austin, I have something I wanted to say. You know who else had a really small sample size but looked good the one year he played?
Who?
Brock Osweiler. How'd that turn out?
Oh, yeah, that didn't turn out well for anyone there. It was just in a really good system. So that's exactly the problem with ranking these quarterbacks that played 5 games. Yeah, he went 5-0, but it's not like he threw 12 touchdowns and 1 interception. He threw 7 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. It's not that great yet. Even his stats just don't say so. Like he won games, yeah, but maybe that's just a story of how bad Brian Hoyer was, or how bad I can't remember the quarterback's name. It starts with a C. But how bad these guys were, that just putting in a decent guy flips the team around. Quarterback is, in fact, the most important position in football. So taking a really bad guy, taking 2 of the worst in the league and replacing with just someone decent, that's a big upgrade. And to be honest with you, the 49ers did not have a bad team all around. They just had a really bad quarterback. Like, they had some pretty good pieces on there. I really like their fullback, Kyle Juszczyk, but just to pick out one person in particular. And I also like a bunch of their wide receivers and stuff. But regardless, I think that's what's happening. I think that 5-0 is more speaking of how bad their quarterback situation was and not how great Jimmy Garoppolo was. I don't know. I think maybe next season he's just going to be God. Maybe next season he's going to throw 40 touchdowns and only maybe 7 interceptions. But right now it's like it's not right to rank him 10 right now. Like, I don't feel like we have enough. But that's it for David Carr's list. Do you have anything to say about David Carr's list?
Yeah, I actually do. You covered it pretty well, but let's start with some notable problems I have. First of all, Derek Carr does not belong on this list. In this article, he says, after watching several practices during OTAs, the offensive skill players really fit Derek's style. Martavis Bryant is perfect for Derek. That'd be great if he's playing, but what if he doesn't? So that's something else to look out for. Beyond that, I mean, look, I'm not going to... I understand he's trying to not seem biased here, but that's what he's coming off as. So that's just another problem in on its own. So you have that, and then another... Obviously, Austin talked about Newton, and he talked about Garoppolo. And I'm not going to rip as much on Cam Newton because I don't think his inclusion on this list is as much of a problem as it is for Garoppolo. I don't see how you can put a guy who started 10 games in his NFL career in this list. I think that's absolutely ridiculous, and that makes no sense whatsoever. So I don't have a ton more to say other than I think that's a mistake, and I think not having Carson Wentz on this list is bad as well. So I guess all in all, this is not a great list. There are some players on it that make sense, like Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. Some players make sense, but then again, he should have gotten a lot more correct, and I think that this one was not done correctly. So that's all I really have to say on this right now. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap things up today? It's been a good podcast.
No, I think we're good today. I think there isn't really much to add while we're waiting for football to come back. It starts all in less than a month. Should be hearing more about football in just one more month.
I believe the Steelers report to training camp the 27th?
I thought the 22nd, but you're probably right.
You want to check that for me?
Yeah, sure.
All right, and we'll count how many days away that is. But I guess what do you want to do from this point on? Do you want to have another episode at some point? What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, we'll probably after training camp make one more roster prediction. Maybe we'll have one before that though. Maybe we'll go over training camp and stuff. We'll see. We'll see if there's a lot to talk about. It truly depends on the NFL if they give us a lot of stuff to talk about. Wednesday, July 25th is when all players report by 4 p.m. So we were both wrong. All right.
Tomorrow will be 25 days until training camp.
Yeah, man.
All righty. Well, until then, everybody stay tuned, and thank you so much for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. If you have any questions about the show, email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check us out. We're on Twitter at @stronger_steel. We're also on Instagram at @stronger_steel_NFL. And we're on Facebook at Stronger Than Steel Podcast. You can also look us up. We post our episodes on SoundCloud, YouTube, and iTunes under the same name, Stronger Than Steel Podcast. Austin, thank you again for joining me today. I know it's been a long layoff, but it's good to get back talking some football. And before you know it, we're a month away from training camp. We're 2 months away from the Hall of Fame game. And, before you know it, we'll be staring right at week 1.
Yeah, man, it's exciting. We're almost out of sports hell.
It'll be over before you know it. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you as always for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Have a great night.
Peace.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.